All right, so I want to go over a student sample that I thought was really successful for our first essay this school. And we're just looking at an intro and body paragraph, right, to think about how they started, how they continued, and more importantly, what goes into these two paragraphs here. Because if you can write a good intro and a good body paragraph, then you're pretty much on the right path to write successful essays altogether here. So we'll look at this particular essay and just kind of go step by step, right? So I want to read it verbatim, which means word for word, and just go line by line talking about my impressions of it. If you just want to look at the slides, that's cool, but I have some comments on the bottom which I'll address in this video as well in terms of what I thought they did well in relations to the rubric and so forth, right? So let's get started. The student begins with, in Donald Bartham's short story, The School, Bartham suggests that though death taints life, it also brings meaning to life through the use of symbolism, juxtaposition, and characterization. So this is like your most traditional thesis statement or theme type sentence here, where you have a claim and you're going to justify it with devices or something of that nature, right? So it's kind of like the 3-point thesis statement that is pretty universal, and you can use an AP as well. It's kind of the go-to if you're just really stuck in terms of how to establish a claim in your intro paragraph. Now, this is maybe like more of a precis type of structure, but we usually do say the thesis or theme towards the end of an intro paragraph. You don't have to. If you want to just get right to the point, you can do what the student has done, right? So either or is up to you, as long as you have a theme or thesis to begin with here. But the student continues with, the school is actively riddled with death, from plants to animals to even the children themselves, leading the children to question the existence of death. In order to convey how death affects people and their attitude, Bartham actively seeks to keep the prominence of death high and pronounced. So this is kind of like where the student is contextualizing and summarizing, right? They're going to have to like pick and choose what they really want to summarize into the paragraph here. So within these next two sentences, they pick the topic of death, of a quick glance of plants to animals, and even some of the children. And so you're noticing that they're just like really hyper compressing the story into a few lines here, and they're going to have to because they can't overly summarize an intro paragraph, right? We just need a scope of what we'll be observing and just a gist of the story all itself. Can you go a little longer? That's fine. Honestly, if it goes maybe a few more sentences further on, it does work, but I think the student does a really good job here just kind of keeping us framed a certain way of how to approach the story, right? Like what are some of the things that we'll be looking at as we're observing this right up here. So the very last sentence goes, however, despite the heavy topic these children explore and experience, there is still a hope that is offered in the form of a new life. So the student basically ends their summary and kind of looks at it from a more chronological level. So from here to here, like basically all the context and summary stuff, right? They're looking at the story from beginning to end, and they even end with a little bit of this comment here where they say there's still a hope. So they even give a little bit of an angle to consider that the story, although filled with death and sorrow and so forth, it does have hope, and maybe it's not so grim of a story after all. And that's a really good kind of compressing of the entire story in these three sentences here. Again, this is kind of like a flipped type of intro paragraph. Normally, like this sentence over here on the very top would be on the bottom over here, but it works. Full points in this case here. This gets all the sort of like check marks for the intro paragraph requirements here. So with that being said, let's look at the first body paragraph, right? Student says, to start, the teacher allows his life to be consumed with the heaviness of death, rendering him paralyzed to the growth death provides. And this is a really cool topic sentence because I think a more basic version of a topic sentence would be like, the teacher Edgar is characterized as blank, blank, blank. So this student just kind of gets right to the point. They're stripping away a lot of the old sentence frames that you might have learned in the past, and they're simply going to make their claim, their observation, and they give multiple points to look at, right? So in the very beginning of it all, they mention how he's consumed with the heaviness of death, and we're going to move on to the fact that he's paralyzed, and all of this kind of makes sense that he is sort of dead to growing in this way here, kind of like a three-step process. So your topic sentence is going to be like a roadmap for the paragraph. And by seeing all of this, I'm thinking, okay, I know what this paragraph is probably going to be about in this case, right? So the student goes on, the teacher is numb to the emotions that death would normally bring, proven by the flat tone of the narrator throughout the story. This tone of his is shown in his constant pauses and the repetition of evading responsibility through the statement, you know what I mean, And this is, cited correctly in this case, right? So again, we have to have a little summary. We have to have a little bit of like context for our paragraphs, right? So in 2 sentences, student basically observes the fact that we have a flat tone narrator and we're looking at these particular elements, right? A slight little paraphrasing of his constant pauses and the repetition of phrases such as, you know what I mean. So student just brings that in, and that's enough for a paraphrase or summary in this case. They go on to contextualize it further, and this is kind of like where we're starting to move to like inference and commentary. So in the next step, student says, the apathy that the teacher has bleeds into the rest of his life, washing his viewpoint with a nihilistic tint. He uses apathy and nihilism to mask his fear of death and his fear of the unknown. So, okay, now we're kind of getting a more maybe like characterization, deep look for our narrator Edgar, right? We're thinking about the fact that, okay, he's a little bit of a nihilist, he has a little apathy to him here, and this is kind of like who he is for the rest of the story here. Just kind of like drawing out more information from the quote, and that's kind of all you really do for body paragraphs, right? You're starting with a claim. You give a little context from the reading, a little paraphrasing, a little summary, a little quote, right? And then you go into your explanation of said quote, of why it's significant, or we're starting to move to the big ideas here. So student goes on to say, this goes back to him evading responsibility, as that is a tendency that people do out of fear of what may come from facing the responsibility. Also appearing at the end, the narrator glosses over what is an otherwise key and important conversation with the children, further proving the trepidation hidden in his heart. So this is kind of like where the student's making connections between this observation of theirs and then with another part of the story or reading in general, right? So we're looking at the fact that he has this sort of characteristic of being a nihilistic or being more jaded altogether, and that's kind of because he's fearful. Students make an inference. We don't know exactly. Edgar doesn't really say that he's like scared or whatever, but students kind of using evidence to contextualize in their head, this person probably does have fear in their heart, and that's going to affect their conversation with the children. So this is kind of like, making connections between text parts by text parts here, and that's going to be a significant move when you're, so scrapped for word count array. They further going to say, it's clear these worries hold him hostage as they prevent him from being vulnerable, which is a natural and needed expression that humanizes us. And the students kind of like bring this now to us, right? This analysis of Edgar is kind of making it more relevant to us and having us reflect on the fact that expressing our fears or being vulnerable is a humanizing thing, which this guy doesn't have. Student goes on to say, juxtaposed to the children, the teacher views death as a burden, as something that happens meaninglessly, rather than something that defines life's meaning. His inability to see death in a different light leads him to be stunted and stuck in his own viewpoints. Even when the children bring up a different perspective on death, he shrugs it off casually, hardly giving a second thought to it. So we kind of end with a little bit of summary here. We end with kind of what his effects are on other characters, and that's fine. For the first paragraph, we can have something that's kind of more of a setup paragraph, right? But student does offer a lot of good commentary inferences making in their first body paragraph here, and I just want to make a note about this move here. If we go back a little bit, student writes juxtaposed to the children. And again, I'm telling you, the student takes away a lot of the sentence frames that you might see in more, I guess, early essay writing, where someone might write something along the lines of, the author juxtaposes the children with, no, just get right to it, right? This makes it more natural, and it seems more of you're just simply having a conversation, explaining your ideas, rather than writing something very, very canned, right? Like really expected in academic formalities, I guess. So student does a good job naturally using devices, tone even, earlier on in this paragraph. So I don't want to go too much into the rest of their essay. I just want to show you one example of a body paragraph that they wrote along with their intro, but I also want to show you kind of like how well they transition into next paragraph ideas, right? So the student writes additionally. So additionally is a good transition word, and it doesn't have to be additionally, but just they're thinking about like how to add to their argument here. So additionally, due to death's universal wrath, an encounter with it is unavoidable, meaning that tragedy waits for all, not our own death, but in others. Now, admittedly, this sentence a little bit kind of like lengthy, wordy, and just, I guess, choppy because of this little phrase here. I guess the organization of it ultimately is just like too much, right? I'm not saying it's a perfect essay by any means. It's a good essay, but there are some writing choices here and there that just kind of could be sharpened. But I get what they're saying. In this paragraph, student adds to their topic of death and just saying the fact that tragedy awaits us all in the form of the death of others. Boom, there we go, right? So the student further goes on to say, because the story setting is placed in a school, this point is further accentuated as school is commonly represented as a place of beginnings. You see, again, students going back to the same process, right? Makes their claim, gives us a little bit of a summary or like focus of what they're going to observe. They're going to claim a device, in this case juxtaposition again, and just further explain it. It's a really A and B step process, right? And the more you can do that per paragraph, the more successful it's going to be. So the student, at least for like a sophomore level writing, I think is successful. And for everyone else, you're in the ballpark, but again, as mentioned in class, you're kind of more in the summary world right now. And you want to cut that down and allow yourself to do more commentary, more inference making, more just general big idea analysis. And by doing so, your essay will flourish in that regards.